All right, good evening, everybody. I would like to call the Monday, September 11th meeting of Kimberley City Council to order. One moment. Held here on the homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. Hang on one moment. All right, awesome. Sorry about that. So this evening, in addition to the regular agenda, we also have an in-camera. We'll go directly from regular, which it doesn't look like we have an unusually long agenda this evening, but we'll move right into in-camera. And for those of you watching online this evening, in-camera for a lot of people is interpreted as behind closed doors. And yes, it is behind closed doors, but only for those items that refer to land, labor, or legal, and in particular where there is a material or a financial interest of the city, and therefore you as taxpayers involved if that information were in the public domain. At some point in the future, all of that information is in fact released. Yeah, it's in the best interest of the taxpayers that we have in camera. So if anybody has any questions about that, further questions about that, feel free to give us a call at City Hall and we will deal with it. Councillor Dunneback this evening is here, is not here in the building, but is with us by telephone this evening. Thanks for being here, Kevin. And as mentioned earlier, as we go through the evening, particularly on the votes, or if you have something that you wish to add, please just interrupt, and we will be able to deal with things that way.
Thank you,
Okay,
Don.
without further ado, then, Maurice, do we have any addition of late items?
There's no late items, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Thank you, Councillor McBain, and thank you, Councillor Royer. It's been a long time since we've had a meeting, guys. Bear with me. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Next up, we have adoption of the council and committee minutes from the regular meeting of July the 24th. A mover, please. Councillor Roberts, thank you very much. And Councillor Cairns seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Perfect. So next up, we have delegations, and we have two this evening. First up is a presentation from Stephen Fiona from Project Consultants from RC Strategies on our Parks and Facilities Master Plan. So this will be the first opportunity for council to get a view on kind of where this project is going. Welcome, folks.
Yeah, good evening, members of council. Thanks for having us. I'm just going to wait, I think, 2 secs for the slide deck to get queued up, and then we'll start. Great, thank you. Yeah, good evening again. Really excited to be here in person before all of you this evening with my colleague Fiona, who's going to take us home on the last couple slides here. Really the purpose of the presentation here this evening, I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction with the... Oh, I should probably turn it on, hey? There we go. Yeah, so the intent of the presentation here this evening is really just to give you a bit of an introduction to us as your project team. It's the first time we've been before you here in person. Discuss some of the project objectives and process. Obviously, we know that you know those, having approved the master plan to move forward. But we just thought it'd be worthwhile doing a bit of a refresher. And then we're just going to provide you with a bit of an update on what we have going on. There's been quite a bit of work that's been occurred over the last couple of months as we've kicked off the project, and we're kind of in the midst of launching our engagement right now too. So we just wanted to bring you up to date on all of that. No, know, I think we're frozen. Oh, there we go. Okay. About who we are. So the firm that Fiona and I are with, RC Strategies, so we're a parks, recreation, and community services planning firm. That's really the space that we play in within the consulting world is community services, parks, rec, and things related to that, culture, sports, and so on. Our firm is based in kind of co-located in Alberta and BC, but we work across Canada. So the reason we just wanted to mention that is we feel that that really gives us a strong knowledge of trends and best practices, things that we can apply to every project we work in or work on, realizing that every community is unique. There are things that we can bring from other jurisdictions to a project. Obviously, you're seeing just Fiona and myself here this evening, but we have kind of a robust team of about a dozen folks that are working on the project with specialties and engagement and GIS and mapping and graphic design and all those types of things. So just wanted to point out that there's a number of folks working behind the scenes on the project. And we just put a few other examples of other kind of ongoing projects that we're working on, just to reflect that we're working on kind of a whole host of different projects within kind of that Parks and Rec realm, and as obviously as well as your project right now. Our project team, so myself and my colleague Mike Roma, one of my partners in the firm, we're co-managing this project, and we kind of like that co-management approach because it makes sure that we have two kind of senior team members sort of on the project. And you may see Mike and I somewhat interchangeably once we get down the road and we start to present like the draft master plan to you or things that we find out and so forth. But then there's kind of, again, a whole host of other folks, including Fiona, who plays a big role in the project with engagement and research on our team. In terms of the project refresher, so ultimately the master plan is doing a few things. And the first is just trying to get a sense of what the state of Parks and Rec is in the community, kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We need to understand that at a fairly thorough, comprehensive level. And then we can use that to recommend priorities and focus areas. And everybody always thinks of kind of facilities and capital related items, and that's certainly part of it. But the master plan will also be an opportunity to provide some guidance around things related to service delivery, partnerships, programming, how are you best to deliver services to residents, policies that maybe need to be updated, things like that. And then ultimately the master plan is a resource that administration and yourselves can use to inform decision making in the future. Obviously, you have limited resources and you have to make decisions considering a bunch of different service areas and a bunch of different things people would like to see, and the master plan can ensure that those decisions are informed and that you have a point of reference to make those decisions. Just in terms of our project process, so we spent the first couple of months just launching the project, and that was, us getting a whole bunch of information from your staff who've been awesome to work with. They've been great at getting us everything that we need, doing some of the background research and things of that nature. And really where we are right now is in kind of the throes of the community engagement, and Fiona will speak a little bit more to that in a slide or two on what that all entails. But that's really important, obviously, to engage with the community, and we're doing that now in a number of different ways. And then from there, we'll gather up all that information, kind of make sense of it, and start to vision what we think some of those recommended focus areas and priorities will be in the fall. And then later this year and early into the new year, we'll have a draft, and then eventually, obviously, a final master plan for your consideration. So before I hand it over to Fiona here, just wanted to touch on some of the ways that we're learning about Parks and Recreation in Kimberley. And again, our first order of business is to understand the current state of Parks, Rec, and culture and sport and all those things in your community. We do it obviously through a lot of community engagement. We've been around and visited all of your facilities and parks for the most part now, over a couple visits to the community. Review of previous planning and other documents that staff have provided us, look at benchmarking, so comparing Kimberley to other similar sized jurisdictions, spatial analysis, so doing mapping to understand, are there areas where residents don't have as much access to recreation as others, where are some of those areas in the community that maybe are gaps, things of that nature. And then we look at trends and best practices, and then population and demographics analysis, because obviously we know that different cohorts of your community have different recreation and parks needs. So I am going to turn it over to Fiona just to go through a couple of the slides here, and then we'll take any questions you might have.
Awesome. So as you probably are aware, you've got your postcards in the mail, or at least hopefully most of you got your postcards in the mail about the residence survey. We have kicked off our engagement process. So through the website engagekimberley.ca, parks and facilities, we have that up there for people to log on to and put their code in and do that. So our resident survey launched last week. People are probably still getting their stuff a little bit into this week. In addition, we have a coded version, which each individual household gets a different code. And then we'll also have an open version of that same survey so that folks who didn't get a code or maybe live just outside of town have an opportunity to provide some feedback. We also are doing community organizations and community contributor discussions. So those have kicked off today as well. So Steve and I have been busy chatting with some of the different groups and hearing their perspectives on parks and facilities in the community. We also have sounding boards and facilities. So in the aquatic center, we have a sounding board. People can post ideas, as well as online on engagekimberley.ca. There's an idea board as well as a map for people to put pins on places that they like, or pins in places that they think need improvement, or places that they think that they want to have another recreation style or amenity there. We'll also be fielding a community group survey. So groups that don't come out to discussion sessions with us have the opportunity to provide feedback in the form of some questions that we have for them, as well as, in addition, if they didn't get to the topic during our sessions, they can provide some extra stuff there. We'll also be having, as I'm running out of breath, a youth questionnaire. So hopefully we're working with the schools and to get that out to some of our teens ages kind of 13 to 18 range. And then tomorrow afternoon, we have a little bit of a typo there. It says 1 to 3. It's actually from 3 to 5, as well as from 7 to 9 at Centennial Hall. So that's open for anyone. All ages are welcome. And I believe there's a door prize available down there as well. So this is what the resident postcard looks like. So hopefully people have been getting these in their mailboxes. The unique access code that really helps with ensuring that we don't get a flood of responses from one specific group. So pickleball can't come out and say we want more pickleball courts and kind of overwhelm all the responses. We get kind of everyone's perspective in there. We can kind of control how many responses each individual gets to input. So our next steps. So complete the community engagement and research. So Steve and I will be doing that this week. We're in person, and I actually live in the area, so we'll be doing some odds and ends if we don't get to some folks this week. And that usually they'll wrap up probably around early October. Then we'll go in kind of the strategic visioning and direction setting. So kind of working through what did we learn from the folks in the community, what did we learn from our research and other kind of elements there. And we'll develop the draft master plan from there. After the draft master plan is developed, we'll re-engage with the community and get their feedback on what we've found and what we've gone through. So council will be engaged and updated at key points throughout the process. So once we have some results of what we heard from the community, we'll report back on that. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to take any questions you might have.
All right. Standing, thanks very much for that. Council. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so I think it's great what you guys are doing. This is great that the community is getting involved. I think that this is really going to help and enhance the demand and the need for the community. And I really like your presentation. So well done, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious to know whether or not you've been out on any of the biking trails or anything like that. Have you taken a trip back in there?
Yeah, I do live in the area.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I live in Wycliffe.
So you're familiar.
I've been on a few of the trails.
Yeah.
I've been trying to make my way through them, and I have a little app that I've gone around with. It's called the Collector app, and I kind of take a little.
And you're going to have two-sided conversations about pickleball, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing too is that as the years have gone on, the perspective of trails versus the number of streets we actually have in Kimberley has changed substantially. So I'd be interested to hear what people think about that. So, because we have actually more miles of trails now than we do streets. So I think a lot of us should start living out in the woods.
Thanks for that, Sandra. Councillor McBain.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just curious, I really like the fact that y'all are incorporating youth feedback. When you integrate youth feedback though, is it weighted differently than, feedback from non-youth? Just out of curiosity, I mean, because, really the younger people are going to be affected probably for a lot longer and arguably use the facilities a lot more. So just curious about that.
Yeah, thank you for the question through the mayor. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we weight any one piece of engagement more than others. We kind of look at it in the collective. And something also to mention is that when with the resident survey, we've asked folks to respond on behalf of their household as well. So, hopefully people do, right? I mean, we can't tell them how to fill out the survey, nor would we want to, but we are asking them to think of the perspectives of their entire household. And I think more often than not, people do, parents think of their kids probably primarily more than themselves in a lot of cases, and grandparents as well, and so on and so forth.
Scott?
Hi, question for Steve, I guess. We used to have a joint use agreement with the school district and share our recreational facilities quite nicely. That's tapered off in the last few years. I'm wondering if any of the school board assets are included in the survey of what community recreation assets we have.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Another really good question. Our inventory will for sure capture what exists for really all public sector provided recreation, including schools. And we are talking through the stakeholder interviews that Fiona mentioned to representatives from the school system. And I can say, just having been in on a few of the conversations already, we've already heard a lot of commentary about schools and getting access to schools after hours. So, I think one opportunity with the master plan is to at least provide some guidance around having dialogue with the school system. So it's something we're conscious of for sure, and we'll continue to dig into a bit more.
Right, great question. Thanks, Scott. Further? So the postcards, I'm not sure about the other counselors, but I can tell you I've had very positive feedback from folks. They're surprised to get it and are looking forward to doing the input. So I think that's going to be a winner. Nicely done. Okay, Steve, Fiona, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here tonight. We look forward to your next presentation.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Okay, next up, we have a presentation on the Kimberley Transit System update. Danica White, welcome, Danica.
Thank you. Should I share my screen?
The screen is yours.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, you can see that.
Good to go.
Great. Good evening, and thank you for having me. So it's been a while since BC Transit was in front of your council, so I'll start with a brief refresher of BC Transit's partnership model before I get into the Transit Improvement Program and proposed expansion initiative that bring me here tonight. I'm Danica White, the Government Relations Manager for the Thompson-Kootenay region. I'm the main point of contact for local government partners regarding all things public transit. I'm based out of BC Transit's head office in Victoria, and I'm traveling regularly around the region. I've been in the East Kootenays every few months and have had the pleasure of meeting several of you at the Local Government Association event that was held in Kimberley over the winter. So it's nice to see you again. BC Transit is the provincial crown agency charged with coordinating the delivery of public transportation across all of British Columbia, with the exception of those areas serviced by TransLink in the Metro Vancouver area. With the current partnership model, BC Transit coordinates service delivery by working closely with local governments, such as the City of Kimberley, local operators, as well as the provincial government. There are several types of transit service that BC Transit delivers, depending on the different needs of the community. There's conventional transit that has fixed routes and schedules. This typically works well in some of our larger urban centers in the province. There's also custom or handy dart service, which provides door-to-door service for registered customers who are unable to use conventional transit for a variety of reasons. There's paratransit service, which is Kimberley Transit, that has more flexible routing and smaller vehicles that can accommodate customers with wheelchairs or mobility devices. There's also Health Connections trips. This includes the Route 21 that goes to Cranbrook that are fully funded by Interior Health and provide customers with access to medical appointments. This service is booked ahead of time, but can be available for any customers when there's space available. So as most of you are likely aware, public transit is highly subsidized, and the biggest benefit of the BC Transit model is the legislated funding formula. In terms of funding, we have two main formulas. The province provides about 47% of the operating costs for conventional or fixed route transit and 67% of the operating costs for customer handy-dart service. Local governments keep 100% of transit revenues, which helps offset a portion of the operating costs. And the balance is typically made up through local property taxes. And as a note, there's more provincial funding available for handy-dart services due to the higher operating costs per hour of this customized door-to-door service. And as a paratransit system, there is a blended cost share of these two models, and the provincial share of Kimberley Transit, which is a paratransit system, is 61.69%. So that means that the city of Kimberley is funding only about 38% of the total sort of transit costs. So it's a good deal for the city. So the best resource for all of Kimberley residents for transit information is the BC Transit website. It has information on fares, holiday schedules, maps, as well as contact information for customers who need support with lost and found or booking trips on your Health Connections or on request local service. There's also good information on some of our new transit programs, particularly to support youth getting comfortable with taking transit, or how residents can access real-time bus location information through the transit app. And that's that Sideways sort of S app that I'd encourage everybody to download and try out in your area. So transit systems are primarily costed and compared by the number of hours that buses are in service each year. So Kimberley Transit currently provides over 7,000 service hours each year, which delivered over 22,000 rides in the last year. I'll note that ridership data is from manual counts, so I don't have a whole lot of confidence in it all the time. And you'll note that transit revenue is now higher than it was before the pandemic, which suggests that our ridership is likely higher than what I have reported here. We had pre-pandemic ridership as 26,000, but the revenue was only 67,000. So I think if we're looking at revenue, our revenue is certainly higher than pre-pandemic. So I think ridership recovery is quite strong. And the transit system provides local on-request service, as well as transportation to Cranbrook 5 days a week. And there's also a daily free ski shuttle that operates in the winter. NextGen Transit operates this service with a fleet of 5 vehicles. The general manager is located in Cranbrook and the company's head office is in Trail. So I'll switch gears to talk about how we go about making changes to a transit system, specifically changes that require additional investment from local governments and the province. So every winter, we start the annual process of reviewing strategic plans, as well as feedback and ridership trends from customers and the local operating company. I work with local government staff, specifically Troy Pollock, to identify any changes that would keep service levels aligned with transit demand. Upon confirmation of your council's commitment to an expansion initiative, we submit a request for additional funding from the province in October. Following confirmation of the provincial budget in February, we begin implementing the new service the following fiscal year, which begins in April for BC Transit in the province. The takeaway from this process is that timelines to implement additional service are quite lengthy, often 18 months from the time that an initiative was first identified. and that all expansions are subject to provincial funding. So once expansion funding is secured, that legislated funding formula provides annual funding to cost share operational expenses each year. And in other words, we only have to seek that provincial funding once when we want to increase the level of funding commitment from the province. So the annual review has revealed that Kimberley Transit's most urgent need right now is to expand the size of the fleet by at least one additional vehicle. Currently, all vehicles are in service every weekday, and it's a real challenge to maintain scheduled service when there's an unexpected maintenance need like a flat tire or a wildlife collision, as well as in the winter when we add on that additional layer of service to the ski hill. The general manager of NextGen has been doing an exceptional job avoiding service disruptions, but the risk of missing service due to vehicle shortage has remained high in the last little while. This has been also exacerbated by our local maintenance provider in Kimberley that has gone out of business. And right now, there aren't any other options that have been found locally. So our maintenance provider for the vehicles is in Cranbrook. So it works well to pair a vehicle investment with a little bit of extra service that customers can experience. So this expansion proposal includes one additional light duty vehicle and an additional 555 annual service hours, which we have proposed to expand the ski shuttle in the winter to serve the Nordic Club and expand the local on-request service in the summer to operate during the hours of the farmers market. And we seek provincial funding to cover a certain number of additional vehicles and service hours. A reminder that local governments are only billed for service hours that are actually delivered. And once the provincial funding is secured, there is some flexibility for how exactly these 550 hours could be scheduled. It doesn't have to necessarily be for service to the Nordic Club or the farmers market. What we're seeking from the province is a commitment to fund up to an additional vehicle and 550 hours. You'll see a few other expansion initiatives has been costed out for you just to give council some awareness and potential consideration for future years. A lot of this is based off of customer feedback from riders and from the operators who are listening to customers' needs every day. So this includes more trips on the Kimberley Cranbrook commuter, increasing the frequency of the ski shuttle, as well as running it in the summer for a few months. We hear there's a lot of demand from golfers in July and August for that shuttle. So upon authorization from council, we will include your expansion initiative in BC Transit's funding request to the province. And following confirmation of the provincial budget in late February, we would initiate a transit service implementation plan. And in the meantime, I'm working with colleagues who manage our provincial transit fleet to explore any opportunities to bring an additional vehicle into the Kimberley Transit's fleet prior to this upcoming ski season, just to provide some stability and reliability for transit service once we're layering on that additional service in the winter. Thanks, and I'd be happy to take any questions, and I believe the decision for this is coming later on in your agenda.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Danica. Much appreciated. Council. Go ahead, Stephen.
So I do remember you at that conference and great presentation. And I do remember a couple of things that really stuck in my mind. You mentioned about electric buses in Victoria. Has that ever been implemented?
We have our pilot electric bus that is in Victoria and operating right now. We also have a contract for 10 electric buses that we're expecting to be in service this calendar year. You might have seen there's been some challenges with Proterra, who our contract is with. So right now, I think there's still some things being sorted out, but we do have a contract for the delivery of 10 electric buses into the Victoria system this year. And then BC Transit has deployment plans for several other regional systems to introduce, I believe, a total of 115 electric buses into the province in the next sort of several years.
So the reason why I'm asking that is since we're possibly going to replace some buses. Is it possible that we could replace them with electric buses? Just
Right
asking.
now- Yeah, that's a great question. And right now, one of the challenges is that most of the electric bus providers are primarily delivering heavy duty vehicles, and the electric vehicles that are of the size that suits Kimberly best, there's not a lot of options, not a lot of vendors. It's sort of early days for electric buses of that particular size. So I expect over the next couple years, there'll be many more options, and it'll be a lot easier to procure electric vehicles of sort of a light duty accessible size. The other thing that BC Transit is working on is making sure that there is a good place to have that the charging infrastructure. And typically that means a sort of transit depot that is either owned by BC Transit or owned by local government. And right now, I believe in Kimberly, I think we're leasing some space. So investing a lot of money into electrification infrastructure, we certainly want to make sure that we're investing it into a long-term location. So some of those things are sorted out, and that's why this is a very long-range plan to introduce electric vehicles across the province.
Wow, thank you very much. Good answer.
Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, I had a question just around the breakdown for the extra cost share amounts, and I'm just curious how much of the 32 grand or the 52 grand is the new vehicle versus hours for the driver.
The majority of it is the new vehicle.
So theoretically, by adding more hours, the hours isn't as much of a concern. It's the biggest cost is the new vehicle.
Yes, I think it's roughly about 25,000 or something for the new vehicle.
Thanks.
Further. So I do have a couple of questions for you, Danica. So with respect to the numbers pre and post pandemic, I think the rates that we were charging pre-pandemic were $2.50, if I remember correctly, and the rates you show on here are $3, which would account for some of that increase, I would believe.
It
Troy?
it might be.
Pre-pandemic as well? Okay, so we're apples to apples on that? Okay, cool.
No, I'm not sure what your transit rates were in 2019. I can certainly look into that to see what the
No,
rates were if they've gone
not
up since
necessary.
then.
Not necessary. So the previous repair, folks, was that Equicare?
I'd have to confirm.
Troy just confirmed, Danica.
Sorry, Danica, I'm talking over here without my mic, but yes, it was Equicare.
Yeah, thank you, Troy. So with respect to the Kimberly Cranbrook commuter, this route, I think, is a really high priority. I speak to people that use that bus or try to use it on a regular basis, and because the buses are small and they're mostly full, there is a fear of not being able to get home once people are in Cranbrook. The buses are just too small, and there's not enough capacity for being able to manage the load back and forth. We have right now somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 trips a day that go between Kimberly and Cranbrook. We got this information from MOTI, and there's just a huge opportunity for the 1,000 to 1,500 people that live in Kimberly and work in Cranbrook to be able to take this transit service. So I know internally we need to talk a little bit more about that, but this represents a big opportunity and really, really high value on many levels. So I think as we look over the next year or two, this Kimberly Community Transit, needs to have a higher priority than we have set on it traditionally. Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, just a question around the vehicle requirements. I'm reading that for the additional Route 22 daily trip addition of two trips per day, that we need 2 more vehicles, and then we also need one for the one additional vehicle for extending Route 23 Peak to Plattsville and the on-request service. I'm just curious, if we did both of those, then would that mean that we would require 3 vehicles?
That's correct.
Further? Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, just question for clarification, Danica. If there was desire by council to do both expansions for both the Route 22 commuter service and the Route 23 shuttle, and so there's 3 buses. You and I had a conversation a while ago about the potential availability of buses of that size. Is that if we're interested in going with both expansions, I guess, for next September, is there any issues there in terms of potential availability of 3 buses for us?
Yes, I'd be happy to speak a little bit of that. One of, as some of you may have known since the pandemic, timelines for procuring vehicles has become quite lengthy. We're certainly experiencing that at BC Transit as well. So our procurement timelines and generally the availability of buses for us to purchase has become a challenge, and we expect that it might be one of the limitations of our ability to expand. And certainly in this year, local government interest in expanding has far exceeded what has been I guess, expressed in the past. And so we expect that there will be likely more demand for expansion initiatives and more demand for vehicles than what we can completely deliver. So nothing is certain until February budget day for what we will get for expansion resources, but we certainly know that some of the limits will be in our ability to procure vehicles. So seeking 3 vehicles, we might not get all 3 vehicles for an expansion initiative. We can certainly try, and based on our internal prioritization, if we are limited to vehicles, I would certainly be pressing for that additional vehicle to go into your sort of fleet spare ratio to manage that critical operational issue before it goes into adding on additional trips for that commuter, if that makes sense. So there's no harm in asking, but I just want to manage expectations that we may not be able to get expansion hours and buses for both initiatives.
And so just to be perfectly clear for me, it is an option for us to pick both options, I guess, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. Thanks.
We just might not get the buses that we need, I guess. So yeah.
Go ahead,
Or the
Councillor McGuire.
hours.
Yeah, I'm just still having trouble with the math here. If we get 555 hours from one vehicle, why then do we only get 850 out of 2? I'm just
So
seeing, like,
essentially the first vehicle is, I'll say, an operational requirement, even if you get no hours. It's operationally critical. And we're able to squeeze in a little extra service because we're extending a bus trip that already exists. So we don't need another vehicle on the road. We take a bus trip that I'll say is 20 minutes and we'll make it 25 minutes. So we don't need an extra vehicle. What we really need is another spare vehicle so that we don't have all 5 vehicles on the road at the same time. They're rotating with a spare so that if one needs preventative maintenance or gets a flat tire, it can go to the shop without us missing service for the day. And if we want to introduce additional trips, like more trips into Cranbrook for the commuter, we need to introduce another vehicle and another spare, because we're still trying to build the fleet into what has an acceptable sort of spare ratio to maintain reliable service. And I'll be honest, one additional vehicle is sort of the bare minimum that the system needs.
got it. Thanks.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Danica. Really appreciate the update.
You're very welcome.
Okay, Moving on to our next item on the agenda, which is item 2.1, the solid waste regulations and fees bylaw amendment. And the motion before council is to adopt. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor McGuire moves, Councillor Royer seconds. Discussion. We have discussion on this. We've discussed it a couple or 3 times ahead. We ready to go? Nick, anything you want to add?
No, we're 1 week into the selection. I think it's been a pretty successful first week. A few little things that we need to tweak and manage going forward, but all in all, the buy-in from the community is more than we anticipated at this point. So
Yeah.
so things are looking great.
So we can adopt this and sleep at night.
Yes,
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Royer.
I've had some feedback on some people. They're just basically told me I'm never going to use this green bin ever. So I should not have to pay the taxes, right? I go, no, sorry, that's just not going to happen. Everybody has to pay, and there's nothing you can do about it.
So this bylaw is not only about the organics pickup, it is the full range of services. So let's stay focused. Any further comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thanks for the feedback, Steve. Okay, next up is the transit update and specifically the service expansion recommendation. And the motion on the floor is that council approve the expansion of Route 23, Winter Shuttle, and Route 24, the local on-demand transit service, as per the report. Councillor Royer moves. Councillor Roberts seconds. Discussion. Okay, go ahead, Troy. Lead us off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so thanks again to Danica there for the overview of the not just the expansion proposals here, but the overall transit system, which is a good update for all of us, I think. Recommending, so this is just building on kind of previous decisions of council that even like step back to pre-pandemic times when there was a previous MOU approved for expansion of the winter shuttle service. At that time, we were just looking at expansion of hours, but as Danica pointed out, there we're in a position now where it's really important that we expand for at least one fleet vehicle to just to be better prepared and be more resilient for any potential issues with fleet vehicles. There is a couple of options as was discussed somewhat there before to expand both like either or. So expand one bus and the winter shuttle service up to 555 hours. And as Danica said, some flexibility to play around with scheduling and work on what might best meet needs there. The other options there, of course, is to add an additional 2 buses and expand the commuter service so that there'd be an additional morning trip and additional evening trip. Certainly both either or both options are on the table for council to consider. We did recommend the winter shuttle, just partly being mindful of costs and that's what had been talked about before. But as we know, there's been a number of changes in the community, and if there's feedback about expanding that as well, then that's something worthy of consideration. One other point I wanted to make is as per the timeline that Danica pointed out, they are looking for an answer on this by the end of September. So there is the option of just deferring decision until the next meeting if council wants to think on it a bit more. But I'll leave it at that in case there's more questions.
Scott?
I didn't have much of a chance to work with Troy on this, but I would add that the resort development strategy expires in 2024. It is mentioned in the report, but we could increase the amount of revenue coming into the transit system by increasing that amount of money from the resort development strategy. As well, years ago, the ski shuttle bus was underutilized. We thought the best advertising was to make it a free ski shuttle. We could look into what the ridership's like now and possibly charge for those rides up to the hill as well.
Councillor McBain.
Yeah, I really appreciate the the report and the further explanation and I think Mayor kind of hit it on the head. I to me is when you start establishing a transit system that functions, and given the dynamic that we do have between Kimberley and Cranbrook, um, we have kind of an increasing senior population, and we have, I would say, people at the younger end, the youthful, the more, well, the younger people that are more willing to use transit. The one thing that you really do not want to have is a service level that's just getting the job done. It's almost better to have a little bit more. And this is just from my experience living in the city using transit. Nothing worse than when the bus pulls up and it's jammed and you literally can't get on and you're downtown 20 miles away from home. It sucks. So I really appreciate, this is laid out in a methodical way. And I think it's a way that I think it's laid out in a way that we can absorb, and provide, the folks in town, a service that they're clearly embracing. So to me, this is, it's kind of a no-brainer. I appreciate Scott's comment too. I think there's some opportunities there as well. But, no, I think this is really, really great for the town.
So just to be clear, we do not have the Cranbrook Kimberley commuter in the resolution that we have on the floor.
Understood.
Yeah,
I was just,
okay.
in general, I was just commenting.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor McBain. Councillor Cairns? You look like you
Thank you.
have a comment.
I fully agree with everything that's being said, that it's really important to, when people start moving ahead and, which has, happened pre-pandemic and then it has rebounded, that it's really important to really support that service. And I am wondering, I've been hearing about kind of this regional transit strategy, and there was a survey on it, I think a number of months ago. How does this dovetail with kind of the regional? I think there was an approach that was started a little while ago, and I remember in City of Cranbrook, they were talking about this back and forth, reducing the number of single vehicle trips between Kimberley and Cranbrook. And I'm just wondering how this kind of dovetails with that.
You want to make a comment, Troy?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot. I've been sort of wondering the same question sometimes. I mean, this is really about our own transit system, I guess, and the four sort of arms of service that we provide and cost share with BC Transit, and thank them for that. You're right, there was kind of two different strategies or studies going on the last half a year or so, I guess it was. One that was, I think, being led by Cranbrook and looking at that kind of Cranbrook region, and transit services between the communities within our East Kootenay region for mostly. And then there was another much wider one, I forgot the acronym, but I think it was ETSI, the Southern Interior. So it's kind of the Kootenay, Columbia, Thompson, Okanagan districts, and so a much wider strategy of and kind of multi-leveled kind of regional systems and also inter-regional systems, I guess. So, I mean, and I think, our commuter service is more of that regional type of service. So just between the two communities within close proximity there. But, in some ways we're not with kind of how we're situated, we're not, well connected to those other communities beyond, I guess, and being able to work with that. But I think through the kind of Cranbrook hub, certainly this helps to interconnect our community with some of those communities beyond Cranbrook, through whatever new services or existing services might already be running there. So, and through those other studies, there may be other expansions opportunities or other abilities for our whether it's our residents to travel beyond our region with Cranbrook, or for folks to come to Kimberley on those same systems. So, so we're related, but not directly related, I guess.
Thanks, Troy.
Councillor Roberts?
Sorry, were you done? Oh, all right, thank you. Troy, I heard you ask Danica, would it be okay if we ended up choosing to approve both that and the community, this one and the commuter service. I noticed though, however, that this particular summary does not recommend that. This summary is signed off by Scott. So maybe that, Scott, it's maybe to you to answer me, why wouldn't we choose option 2 versus option 1? Does it have just to do with cost, or would we be better off to have done this and have it in place for the future?
So what's the thinking, Troy?
Um, Thank you for the question. That was a good question. I think at the time of writing, I was thinking that, hey, we've been working towards the winter shuttle expansion for a number of years, and this is the latest update. I think I was probably being more mindful of the potential cost increase, knowing that we're very early in the budgeting stage, so there's probably going to be other costs and expense increases to consider, I guess. But I mean, I think it's been a good discussion. I wanted to, my question earlier was, I just wanted to be super clear that both options were proceeding with both is an option. And as Danica pointed out, there's some potential that, we might not be able to have the availability of that many buses on the same schedule, but that will, if that's the direction council wants to go, it is definitely an option. And it's not that I recommend against it or anything. I was just more being mindful, I think, of the cost overall.
So if I could make a suggestion, the Cranbrook study was led by the city of Cranbrook, and initially they were only looking at Cranbrook and Ockham. It was a very narrow perspective. They were looking. They have an underutilized transit system, and they're looking for ways to try and make that a little more efficient. And that was kind of the genesis of their particular study. And then it started to expand. It was a little bit disconcerting that it appeared as though nobody in Cranbrook even know we had a Kimberley Cranbrook commuter service. Mostly, I guess, due to the fact that we're the ones managing that, and they really have had nothing to do with it. I think therein lies another opportunity to take a look at another stakeholder that's not, producing, financial input to what it is we're doing. The Columbia Valley has their own unique set of transit issues that really don't relate to the same issues that we have here. I don't know. I would suggest that we move ahead and approve this particular motion, but reserve the right to come back and review the Kimberley Cranbrook commuter. I would love to see a little more data. I mean, we're kind of talking here without seeing a lot of data. And it would be really nice if we could both get the hard data on the trips, but also some of the anecdotal as well. I think we even had a survey that was done not that long ago of the riders. In any event, I'd like to get a little more data before we kind of jump in and say this is the answer. But I don't think there's any question that this is an opportunity for sure. Councillor McBain, then Councillor McGuire.
Yeah, that was going to be my suggestion too, is just kind of keep it in the holster and right, the second part, and ready to go. Kind of for the same reasons as the mayor said, and maybe in the interim too, we could, we've got 1,000 or 1,500 people going down to Cranbrook every day. This might be that interim stage might be a good time to engage Cranbrook and just see what kind of involvement they could have or would have or whatever. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask.
And we have until the end of September, do we?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that clarification. Are you sort of thinking of deferring that question until the next meeting, or longer? Were you thinking?
Well, at a minimum until the next meeting.
Okay.
But let's see what transpires here.
We'll see what we can get for additional information by the next
bang
meeting.
on.
Yeah, gotcha.
But get this first one done.
But the first one will move forward with
Yeah.
the adoption of this tonight. Make sense? Yeah. Woody, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm hesitant to do the bare minimum. It sounds like this was, like that we already need this bus and that it's absolutely necessary and that we're getting extra hours just because, it's implicit in having an extra vehicle. So I'm leaning towards more like a 2 or 3 vehicle. That's where I'm leaning right now. And I'm totally fine with approving this as long as staff recognize that this might change before September. But but yeah, I guess I did have a question just around what data was used to come up with these expansion ideas, and where I guess did Danica and you, Troy, feel uh, these hours are best used. I know that you said that there was an expansion plan previously, but that's not good enough information for me to move forward with this. I mean, maybe trends are changing and now there's more of a need for a commuter service. I just don't know what data this is based on and what the actual recommendation is, pretending that we're not talking about the dollars, just based on usership and the needs within our community, where what's the best scenario?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I believe Danica is still on the line and listening, I hope, and maybe we'll ask her to comment on part of that, but I just want to take a bit of a shot at that if I can. For some of that, and part of the original proposal for expansion of the winter shuttle service was feedback from users and the transit operators about feedback that they're getting from users, that just there was desire for expanded hours of that service. I think council has heard from the Nordic Club almost every winter the last few years about their parking challenges and the desire to kind of expand the winter shuttle service. And you know, so that's a big part of it for sure. And you know, there's been other kind of similar related requests, I guess. And we're also, you know, we do get feedback regularly from users of the commuter service. So we do know that, you know, there's demand. Sometimes that's not so much about expansion, but just kind of modifications of the schedule to kind of better fit. And you know, the schedule that we have was based on the previous service reviews there, like scheduling reviews there to kind of best fit as many schedules as possible. But that proposed expansion here would just allow for that extra trip. And I don't know if it means an adjustment of the schedule overall to all 3 trips in the morning, all 3 in the afternoon, but there just might be better chance of you know, just making better use of that service with the additional route there. So I'll maybe let
I just wanted to, if Danica's speaking, I also was just curious about, you know, the number of hours. Again, you mentioned that there was a flexibility to not necessarily use, even if we get an expansion, not to use all those hours. Is that, but I'm under the impression if you ask for 3 buses, you get 3 buses, you pay for 3 buses. Is that correct? Like you can't just apply for 3 and then only use 2.
Danica, can you?
Would you like me
expand
to
on that?
chime in? Sure.
Yeah.
Right now, because of the limitation in our fleet vehicles, if you want to apply for 2 and then, or apply for 3 and then only get 2, there's lots of other systems who would happily take a bus off your hands. So I wouldn't stress too much about changing your mind and reducing the level of service that you'd like to introduce. I think it's certainly better to be comfortable asking for the most that you might be willing to commit to and the most that you might want the province to commit funding to as well. And then it's easier for us to dial it down than it is for us to increase service. And as I mentioned, some of these implementation timelines, you know, they take sometimes 18 months in order to implement. So it's good to be thinking about really future service needs.
Okay, we're going to call the question on this one. Go ahead.
I'll just comment that I think that the concept of looking to the future, given the timelines that are associated with these kinds of things, and then that we're at capacity now in terms of the Kimberley Cranbrook commuter, it's really, I would really like to see this expansion of the Kimberley Cranbrook.
Last word, Woody.
Yeah, I'm going to be voting against this motion just because I would like to see at least a minimum of 2 or 3. And my intention would be to support a motion with more buses. I'm just making that clear.
Troy.
I want to just throw it out there. Like, it sounds like there's some interest in the option 2 that's presented in the report. I mean, I don't know what's involved there, just to do an amendment, I guess, to amend that motion to the option 2, if that's of interest, or.
go for it, but I mean,
I can propose that amendment.
Hang on, option 2, what are you referring to, Troy?
In the staff report, response option 2, under the
The
recommendation.
council approved the expansion of both Route 23 and 24, and the Route 22.
comment with that, Don, is even given the that I agree with you on, you know, it'd be nice to have more data. I think even anecdotally, I think we know which direction we're heading, and I'm comfortable moving in that direction. So even though I don't mind the idea of deferring, if the interest is enough, deferring until before the end of September, if the interest is enough to go forward, I would be comfortable going forward too. So I'm comfortable with that amendment.
So, so the cost estimates that have been put down here, and as Scott mentioned earlier, we have an opportunity potentially with some other revenue sources. We don't have anything in front of us on that right now. It's not going to take that long in order to get that put together in a form that will allow council to take a look at exactly what our expenditures are going to be for what we're going to get. And I feel a lot more comfortable if we had that in front of us first. So if we pass this one, we go back and with a target of coming back to the next meeting, but certainly, well, I guess it would have to be the next meeting if it's by the end of September. Is that a reasonable thing, Troy? I mean, we're just talking about collecting information and formatting it, information that's already there, right?
Why don't we defer then?
Well, because we don't have the full picture in front of us. Where are the ancillary funds going to come from, and how
That's
much
what
are
I'm
we going to
saying,
be able to
defer.
take?
Defer until next meeting, rather than making a decision now.
Oh, on the
The whole thing.
whole thing.
I'd be comfortable moving
That's
that.
fine too.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable moving that.
Yeah. So, so we can have a deferral movement kind of within the motion, and it will override the original motion.
Yeah, defer to next meeting.
Okay, it's a motion
Defer to next meeting. Yeah.
from Councillor McGuire, a seconder. Councillor Cairns, thank you very much. All those in favor of the deferral? Any opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Good conversation, and I think, you know, a really good indication of kind of the priorities that are emerging in front of us here and our desire to get ahead of the curve. So, good conversation. Okay, next up, we have the COVID-19 Safe Restart Community Grant Program. We had an applicant that was missed, unfortunately, and the motion on the floor is to approve the grant from Summit Community Services. Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor McBain seconds. I don't think we need any discussion on this, Pam. We're good. Call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have our check run in the amount of $2,037,327 to be approved as paid. Mover, please. Councillor Royer, thank you. And Councillor Roberts seconds. Are there any non-routines in here? Anybody wishes to bring forward? Okay, cool. Comments? I think we need, we did. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, moving on to correspondence. We have a few items of correspondence. Could I have a mover to accept? Councillor McGuire, thank you very much. Councillor Royer seconds. Discussion. There was a so Nick, can you make a comment on 2.3? This is the 304th Street dead end letter that came in. Okay, so it's the so I'll describe and then I'll ask the question. So it's that little tract of land from Marysville Arena that goes out to a stop sign. It's kind of in front of the homes down there. I know over the years, there has been either request or discussion on whether or not that particular street should be dead-ended. No question that that stop sign coming onto the highway at that kind of very acute angle, causes some safety concerns. This is just the latest that's come up. A resident has put in yet another request to have that reviewed. Is this something that you've been involved in the past, or is there? I hate to put you on the spot, but
No problem at all. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about. It's been on our radar for several years, and it's actually in the capital plan for 2025 to close off that kind of fifth leg of the intersection.
okay.
So it is in the works. It's currently set for 2025. If we feel this is a little more urgent, then we could look to maybe bump that up to next year. Not a large project, I guess,
Relatively small
in the
project.
grand scheme of things. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. We can let Mr. Foreman know that it's not only on the radar, but it has been in a plan. So, okay, cool. Thanks for that, Nick. Yeah. Anything else, Council? Go ahead.
Sure. I want to comment on the emergency or the secondary emergency evacuation route letter from Forest Crown. And just, I understand from the last meeting staff report that the secondary emergency evacuation route is required to be fully developed and functional before subdivision approval on phase 4. And just looking for staff comment on the evacuation routes and fire breaks and how that information is going to be communicated, to council and to the community. I'm aware that the CWRP is being updated, but I think that's really important information for the community and council as a whole. So just looking for comment on that, perhaps Scott or Troy.
Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, thank you. I can speak to at least some of that, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think we talked at the previous meeting there around the development permit discussion for the Forest Crown Phase 4. That emergency egress road was actually a requirement of the previous phase and was constructed as a condition of approval there. And there was connectivity into the wider neighborhood network since then. But with this latest phase being Phase 4, this will formalize and improve the accessibility of that egress road. It's one thing. There was some question about kind of the, I guess the sort of the suitability or the functionality of that. We're looking at it as like this is a secondary egress. Hopefully we'll never need to use it, but it's important that it is there and it is accessible. One thing we've talked about internally at the staff level is we do need to schedule some annual maintenance of that route just so that it's checked regularly and regraded in the spring or summer just to make sure that it's ready to go if needed. There's been some weed control issues on there, and there can be some spring runoff and stuff that leads to some maintenance. But it is designed to work and function as a necessary egress if needed. It will be gated to prevent its use when it's not when it's not needed for emergency egress or access for emergency response up into the neighborhood. But we'll be making sure that that there's some functionality to it as a trail or a connection point in that sense, but not as a vehicle access point unless we're opening that up for that purpose. Part of our emergency preparedness is emergency planning and evacuation planning, and that's really what led to the creation of this route a couple of years ago. Was recognizing that was definitely a need in that community. I think part of the question around how's that going to be communicated, I think that's part of that emergency planning and preparedness is just making sure that there's messaging and communicating where those are. I know at one point we had some signage, plans for signage on those so that they're marked as emergency egress route, so that there's some familiarity with that. Of course, in the event of an emergency, there would be all kinds of efforts to communicate those options and what's required there. So I think the one thing I would add there is if this is secondary. I think if necessary, we would use, there's a two-way road, two direction travel on the access road into Forest Crown, and we'd probably be using both lanes for the most part as an egress, as a priority egress out of there if needed. And then so in some ways this would be almost a third lane out, I guess. So, and with the existing and anticipated kind of resident population there in the near term, we think this would certainly be sufficient in most cases. I mean, there's no guarantees, depends on the particulars of any emergency event, but certainly a lot better situation than we had just a few years ago there. So.
Thanks, Troy. Further?
Thanks, Troy. I think what I'm getting at is how is this communicated to the public in terms of the broader emergency preparedness piece, say on our website when people are looking for information, say with the summer that we've just had, people are looking for this type of information. And I'd also just it's been an opportunity to bring up too just both the evacuation routes, but also our fuel treatments and how say from a satellite image, what that looks like around our community, how our work is progressing that, and what's in the plan, what's already completed, that type of thing. That kind of information is what I'm hearing from people that they're looking for.
I think Scott's going to.
Scott? Go ahead.
Yeah, back in March when we had the open house on the fuels management, which is we're deciding that's maybe not the best time. We should do it when there's smoke in the air. Present maps were provided. When we put the evacuation signage up this fall, we will put out some information on some of the fuel treatments that have been done. They're connected, but again, according to the letter, you've got to adapt your plans to suit the situation. And sometimes evacuation routes can change rather quickly. You can't take that egress route down if the highway is cut off to the St. Mary's Road. We have to split the town. Half the town would have to go to Cranbrook. Half the town is headed north up the highway, depending on where the fire's at. So we don't want to be too prescriptive about the evacuation plans, but I've seen the signage in the fire chief's office. We didn't think it was a good time to put it up when there's smoke in the air. It'll go up this fall and it'll be followed up with some public education.
All right. Anything further? Call the question on receipt. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, question period. Other than staff, we don't have anybody in the gallery here tonight. So anybody watching online can ask questions about anything that we have discussed in the meeting tonight. And the number to call if you do have a question is 800-741-7180. And the meeting number when prompted is 2772-900-3648. So give that number a call if you have a question or a comment on anything that we have discussed this evening. While we're waiting to see if anybody calls, let's find out how everybody's summer has been. Councillor McBain.
You have to start with me. Summer's been good, Don. It's very hot outside. It was very hot outside. Yeah. Recently, I think as everybody else, there hasn't been a lot of meetings in the summertime, but we did have a meeting with the Kimberley Health Society. The biggest thing is the board is actually going over the kind of the what we heard report, where we had a consultant go out and basically grab feedback from particular stakeholders on kind of direction and what the next steps would be with the health center. So I have to go through that and provide any feedback that I have. So I'm currently working through that. We need to have that done here, I think, within the next week or so, and then move on to the next steps. Yeah, nothing really else business wise. One thing I guess I'll just bend Nick's here for his consideration because I kind of rant about it every year, and he's been sort of recently new to the job, so I'll just crap at him now. Um, the the area by Marysville Falls, I'd still like us to look into the potential of like some kind of delineators or something at the where the trail comes out and it gets to the highway. And then some kind of direction over to the sidewalks so people can cross at the established sidewalks in Marysville. I cannot believe how many people step out onto a highway without looking. It blows my mind. And I know this is informational thing, but yeah, so the summer went on, so this is I'm throwing it out there to you now. Yeah, it would be really good to look into that. I think there's a couple benefits to it, safety, and I think shopkeepers in Marysville I think would like people getting pointed that direction too. So you don't even need to comment on it right now, Nick. Just it was something that it drives me crazy every single year, and I'd really hate to see somebody get hurt there. But other than that, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the summer's been okay.
You've been working.
I do have a job, yeah.
Awesome. Stephen.
I've had a pretty quiet summer. Participated in the senior games, and I'm not going to say how I did. Everybody knows how I did. So I had a great blast in Abbotsford. Not too many things going on. There's some meetings coming out of the Cayenne. Meetings coming up mid-September. I'll be dealing with that. And I've been asked to do the dunk tank in the fall. And I dare anybody to join me so that we can raise money for a good cause. So I would love to see somebody from this room to participate, please. And besides that, it's been a great year, and I hope everyone else is enjoying what's left of our summer. I think we've only got a couple of weeks left before the snow comes.
Thanks, Stephen. Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been an interesting summer for me. I've spent part of it here and part of it in the Okanagan, where everybody was in a panic over the fires, none of which were really affecting Penticton, but it certainly was smoky. Previous to that, I've been having the opportunity to watch the people from the Arts Council in action during their first Saturdays and their kaleidoscope events, and they've just been doing the most amazing job. They've just bent over backwards to make these occasions really special, and I applaud them for that. But I don't think they get enough pats on the back for all of the work that they do and for all of the energy that it takes and the creativity that it takes to make it happen and get those extremely talented people to participate. It's just really, they deserve it. So I'll have a meeting with them, I think, tomorrow night, the first time in the summer. So look forward to talking to them and telling the same thing.
Thank you very much. Sue.
Thanks. So I went to the Bear Working Group meeting on August 31st, and they're working on the Wild Safe BC survey for residents on human bear conflicts. I understand Pam is working on it with Danica, and that it will be live soon, and it'll most likely be running right through to the spring. And at that meeting, we talked about the organics program and need for public education, community champions to help folks kind of work out those solutions that will work for them. And the need for stricter enforcement was raised, and a desire for increased fines for non-compliance. And that perhaps the survey would include questions about what people see for solutions if they're really struggling around the organics piece. And there was also a suggestion raised around a Bear Smart type of page on the City of Kimberley's website, similar to what some other communities like Kamloops is doing. And then an opportunity for Wild Safe Learning is at Wild Sites September 16th Harvest Party and juicing event at the community garden. Still scheduled for the 16th? Okay. Okay, and then the other item was the Nature Park Society board meeting on September 7th. So the board is very busy working on a new trail map and guide, and also separately working on a new society logo. And the society has been participating in the CBT, the Columbia Basin Trust Advisor Program for Organizational Development. So right now they're looking at an organizational assessment and potentially doing some strategic planning. And they've advised, well, that the city advised them that the burn treatment for the WISA habitat area isn't likely going ahead this fall. So I attend these meetings, but I'm not formally appointed as a liaison, not assuming that I would be the one. However, the society does want to activate its MOU with the city, which designates it as the manager of these lands on behalf of the city. They do require the appointment of a formal liaison to do that. And then my final item is I just wanted to highlight October 14th as a save the date. The Kimberley has a tour of homes that are highly energy efficient and low carbon emissions. So understand, I think, yeah, Pam, and Troy, yeah, are involved with that, with Community Energy Association, and it's happening across the Kootenays. And so there is a live climate friendly homes tour .ca website, and Kimberley's community page is live there. So looking for homeowners who have highly energy efficient homes and low emissions to be signing up for that. And then UBCM is coming up, and I'm on the steering committee with the BC Municipal Climate Leaders, so have the opportunity to meet with ministers on September 18th. And then following that, there are some at Seaboard meetings in Kelowna, so I'm going to be gone for a while when I go to UBCM. So yeah.
All right. Thanks,
Thanks.
Sue. Woody.
Yeah, since last meeting, I haven't done much on behalf of the city. I was actually on a trip to States for 10 days and got to go camping in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which I'd never experienced before. It was quite lovely. Didn't see any ticks, no bugs. Pretty enjoyable. Weather was good. And yeah, I've got a busy fall ahead of me, but yeah, nothing to report as far as city business.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that, Woody. Pardon me. Do we have anybody dialing in? Oh, pardon me, Kevin. Just unmute, Kevin.
Is that better?
Yep, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, it's been a great summer. The Kimberley Underground Mining Railroad Society was super happy with the car show and welcomed us back for next year. We also have had a couple of grants to lengthen our patio in front so we can help people on scooters and stuff get on and off safely, and that's kind of undergoing right now, I think. So it was a huge success. Everybody had a ton of fun. We got lots of ideas for next year for the car show, and my summer's been super busy, a lot of fun out on Kootenay Lake. I'm actually sitting in my wheelhouse right now watching a fish jump and watching a couple of cranes do some fishing as well. So it's been a busy summer, lots on the go, but it's nice to hear and see everybody again.
Awesome, Kevin. Thank you. All right. As mentioned earlier, we have an in-camera, but I have a mover to head into in-camera. Thank you, Councillor McBain and Councillor Royer, seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. Thanks, staff. Appreciate you guys being here. Does Kevin need his phone back in?